Hello there, and welcome to the sleepy ocean. Tonight, we are going to sink beneath the waves, leaving the noise and the light of the surface far behind, to visit one of the most mysterious and misunderstood creatures in the deep. Down here, the water is calm, the darkness is absolute, and life moves at a different, slower rhythm. We are journeying to the midnight zone to meet the anglerfish. To understand this creature, we must first understand the world that shaped it. The deep ocean is a place of crushing pressure and eternal silence, a vast, watery void where the sun is nothing more than a memory. In this realm, the anglerfish does not swim with the frantic energy of surface fish. Instead, it drifts. It is a master of buoyancy and stillness, hovering in the water column like a dark, silent balloon. This lack of movement is not laziness, but a survival strategy perfected over millions of years. In a world where food is scarce and every calorie counts, spending energy to swim is a risk the anglerfish rarely takes. It simply waits, suspended in the gloom, letting the ocean currents cradle it. Suspended in this endless night, the anglerfish relies on a piece of anatomy that has become legendary, a shining beacon in a sunless world. Emerging from the center of its head is a modified dorsal fin, a long, slender spine that acts as a fishing rod. This appendage, known scientifically as the elysium, is not a stiff bone, but a flexible, muscular tether that the fish can wave back and forth. At the very tip of this rod hangs a bulb of flesh called the esca. This lure is the anglerfish's most precious tool, a tiny, glowing orb that dances in the dark. But the light does not come from the fish itself. The glow is created by millions of microscopic bacteria living inside the lure. These bacteria are bioluminescent, meaning they are capable of producing their own light through a chemical reaction. The anglerfish and the bacteria share a symbiotic relationship, a quiet partnership in the deep. The fish provides the bacteria with a safe home and nutrients drawn from its own blood, and in return, the bacteria provide the light that the anglerfish needs to survive. This light is not merely a static lamp, it is a sophisticated biological instrument. The anglerfish can control the light, pulsing it on and off to mimic the movement of small, appetizing prey. Some species can even retract the lure, sliding the rod back into a specialized groove on their head to protect it or to draw prey closer to their waiting jaws. The light produced is a soft, blue-green glow. In the deep ocean, red light is absorbed quickly by the water and becomes invisible, but blue light travels the furthest. By emitting a blue-green signal, the anglerfish ensures that its lure can be seen by other creatures from a distance, cutting through the murky darkness like a lighthouse in a fog. This glow is often the only thing visible in the midnight zone, a singular point of fascination that draws curious eyes in a world of shadows. But while the lure is designed to be seen, the rest of the anglerfish is designed to disappear. Its skin is a marvel of camouflage. Many species of anglerfish are colored a deep, velvety black or a dark, muddy brown. This coloration is not accidental. It is specifically adapted to absorb almost all light that hits it. In fact, the skin of some deep-sea anglerfish is so dark that it reflects less than 0.5% of the light that strikes it. This ultra-black skin renders the fish effectively invisible in the gloom. Even if a predator or prey were to shine a bioluminescent searchlight in its direction, the light would simply vanish into the fish's skin, leaving no reflection to betray its presence. It is a creature of the void, wrapped in a cloak of darkness that allows it to hide in plain sight. Beneath this light-absorbing skin, the anglerfish's body is soft and pliable. Unlike surface fish that have strong, dense skeletons to battle the currents, the anglerfish has bones that are thin and flexible. Its muscles are jelly-like, and its flesh is watery. This gelatinous structure is an adaptation to the immense pressure of the deep sea. At these depths, The weight of the water above is strong enough to crush a submarine or a human instantly. But the anglerfish survives because it does not try to resist the pressure. Its body is filled with fluids that match the pressure of the surrounding water, making it incompressible. It has no swim bladder, the gas-filled sac that surface fish use to stay buoyant, because a gas pocket would collapse under the weight of the deep ocean. Instead, the anglerfish is neutrally buoyant, meaning it neither sinks nor floats, but exists in perfect equilibrium with the crushing water around it. Because it does not need to fight gravity or currents, the anglerfish has a shape that seems strange to our eyes. It is not streamlined or sleek like a tuna or a shark. It is round, globular, and somewhat clumsy looking. This shape creates significant drag, making the anglerfish a very poor swimmer. It cannot chase down prey in a high-speed pursuit. If a potential meal flees, the anglerfish cannot follow. This physical limitation dictates its entire existence. It must be an ambush predator, a creature of infinite patience. It can float motionless for hours, or even days, waiting for a single crustacean or fish to drift within range. Its metabolism is incredibly slow, allowing it to survive on very little food. An anglerfish can go weeks or months without eating, its body entering a state of low-energy stasis as it waits for the next meal to arrive. When that meal finally does arrive, the anglerfish transforms from a passive drifter into a terrifyingly efficient trap. Its mouth is enormous relative to its body size, stretching from ear to ear, if it had ears. The jaw is not fused like ours. It is hinged in a way that allows it to swing open to a shocking width. This massive gape creates a vacuum effect. When the anglerfish snaps its jaws open, water rushes in to fill the space, sucking the prey into the mouth before it even realizes it is in danger. This action happens in milliseconds, faster than the human eye could blink. One moment the prey is investigating the glowing lure, and the next it has vanished into the dark void of the anglerfish's maw. Lining these massive jaws are teeth that look like translucent needles. These teeth are not designed for chewing or grinding. They are recurved, meaning they point backward toward the fish's throat. This design serves a specific purpose. It creates a cage. Once a prey item passes the threshold of the teeth, escape is physically impossible. Any struggle to back out only drives the prey deeper onto the sharp points. The teeth are also hinged at the base, allowing them to fold inward to let food pass easily into the stomach, but locking rigid if the prey tries to move outward. They are made of a material that is barely visible in the water, looking more like shards of glass than bone, ensuring that the prey does not see the trap until it is too late. Once swallowed, the meal enters a stomach that is just as remarkable as the mouth. The stomach of an anglerfish is incredibly elastic, capable of stretching to an enormous size. In the deep sea, meals are rare and unpredictable. You cannot afford to be picky, and you cannot afford to leave leftovers. Because of this, the anglerfish has evolved to eat things that are physically larger than itself. Scientists have found anglerfish with prey in their stomachs that were twice the size of the anglerfish. It would be the equivalent of a human swallowing a cow whole. This ability to gorge allows the anglerfish to capitalize on any food source it finds, storing massive amounts of energy that will sustain it through the long, hungry periods of isolation that define life in the deep. This isolation is profound. The deep sea is vast, and creatures are scattered thinly across the darkness. An anglerfish might live its entire life without seeing another member of its own species, other than a mate. Because of this solitude, the anglerfish relies heavily on senses other than sight. While its eyes are often small, and not particularly powerful, except for spotting bioluminescence. Its sense of touch and vibration is acute. Running along the sides of its body is a sensory system called the lateral line. This is a series of microscopic organs that can detect the faintest displacement of water. If a shrimp flicks its tail a few feet away, the anglerfish feels the pressure wave against its skin. It builds a map of its surroundings not through light, but through the feeling of the water moving. It can sense the heartbeat of the ocean, detecting the rhythmic strokes of fins in the distance, long before the creature comes into view. There are more than 200 different species of anglerfish, and they come in a variety of shapes and sizes, though most are quite small. The classic deep-sea anglerfish, the one we often picture, is usually the female of the species. In a strange twist of nature, the females are the giants of the family. Some can grow as large as a meter in length, though many are the size of a football or a cantaloupe. These large females are the ones with the impressive lures, the massive teeth, and the distensible stomachs. They are the queens of the abyss, drifting silently through the dark, waiting for the ocean to bring them sustenance. They are the dominant force in this ecosystem, apex predators in a world of ghosts. But the female is not the only anglerfish. The male of the species is a creature so different that for decades, scientists did not even realize they were the same animal. The male anglerfish is tiny, often only a few centimeters long. He has no lure, no giant teeth, and no expanding stomach. He is not built for the patient, solitary hunting life of the female. In fact, he is not built to hunt at all. His digestive system is stunted, and he cannot feed efficiently on his own. From the moment he is born, he has only one goal, one singular purpose that drives his entire existence: to find a female. He is born with a ticking clock, possessing only enough stored energy to fuel his frantic search for a mate before he starves. To help him in this desperate quest, the male anglerfish has evolved a set of sensory superpowers. His eyes are enormous compared to his head, far larger than the female's eyes. They are specially tuned to detect the specific frequency of blue-green light emitted by the female's lure. He scans the endless blackness, looking for that single, faint spark. But his most powerful tool is his nose. The male anglerfish has huge nostrils, which can make up a significant portion of his head. These olfactory organs are incredibly sensitive, capable of detecting pheromones, chemical signals released by the female, in concentrations of just a few parts per billion. He follows these invisible scent trails through the water, sniffing his way through the void, a tiny, desperate traveler seeking a partner in a universe of silence. The difference in size between the male and female is one of the most extreme examples of sexual dimorphism in the animal kingdom. In some species, the female can be 60 times longer and 500,000 times heavier than the male. Imagine a human being standing next to a skyscraper, and you begin to understand the scale. When the male finally finds a female, he does not court her in the traditional sense. He does not dance or display colors. He is running out of time, and the darkness is vast. He approaches her carefully, ensuring she is the correct species by the scent of her skin and the pattern of her flashing lure. Once he is sure, he does something that sounds horrific to us, but is an act of supreme devotion in the deep sea. He bites her. The male anglerfish latches onto the female's body with his small, hooked teeth. He might bite her on the belly, the side, or even the head. It does not matter where, as long as he holds on. Once he has bitten her, he never lets go. He releases an enzyme that begins to dissolve the skin of his mouth and the skin of her body where they touch. The tissues begin to melt and merge. The blood vessels of the male fuse with the blood vessels of the female. Slowly, his body becomes physically connected to hers, not just attached but integrated. He becomes a permanent part of her, a living extension of her own flesh. This process is known as sexual parasitism, but the word parasite is perhaps too harsh for such a complete union. Once fused, the male relies entirely on the female for survival. He receives oxygen and nutrients directly from her bloodstream. He no longer needs to hunt, so his eyes, which are no longer needed to find her, atrophy and disappear. His fins, useless now that he will never swim again, wither away. His internal organs, except for the ones needed for reproduction, dissolve. He is reduced to the essentials of life, a tiny heartbeat joined to hers. He becomes, in essence, a permanent provider of genetic material, ensuring that when the female is ready to spawn, a mate is already there, instantly available in a world where finding a partner twice is statistically impossible. A single female anglerfish can carry more than one male. Scientists have observed females with as many as 8 tiny males fused to her body, draped like biological jewelry. This strategy is a brilliant adaptation to the scarcity of the deep ocean. It solves the problem of distance and darkness. The female becomes a self-contained colony, a carrier of her own mates. She provides the food and the mobility. They provide the means to continue the species. It is a relationship of ultimate dependency and ultimate sacrifice. The male gives up his freedom, his form, and his very independence to ensure the survival of the next generation, while the female carries the weight of them all, a solitary mothership drifting through the midnight zone. The environment these fish inhabit, the bathypelagic zone, is located between 1,000 and 4,000 meters deep. The water temperature here is a constant, chilling 4 degrees Celsius, just above freezing. It is a world of incredible stability. There are no seasons in the midnight zone. There are no storms, no changes in weather, no day or night cycles. The environment has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. This stability allows the anglerfish to specialize so intensely. It does not need to adapt to changing temperatures or shifting currents. It has evolved to be the perfect machine for this specific, unchanging cold. Its enzymes are tuned to work at low temperatures. Its cell membranes are fluid enough to not freeze solid. It is a creature of the eternal cold, perfectly preserved in a deep, refrigerated stillness. Despite the darkness, the world of the anglerfish is not empty. It shares the as deep with other strange and wonderful creatures, the vampire squid, the gulper eel, the fangtooth. But the anglerfish is unique in its lethargic dominance. Some species of anglerfish, like the wolf trap angler, have taken the trap concept to an extreme. The wolf trap has an upper jaw that is hooked and hangs over the lower jaw. When it senses prey, the jaws snap shut like a bear trap. Others, like the humpback anglerfish, are rounder and stouter, resembling black basketballs with teeth. Each species has a slightly different lure, a unique glowing shape at the end of the rod. Some lures are simple bulbs. Others have intricate filaments and branching structures that look like glowing seaweed or tiny swimming worms, designed to fool specific types of prey. The evolution of the lure is a fascinating story of repurposing nature. The Elysium, the fishing rod, is actually a modified spine from the dorsal fin. In most fish, the dorsal fin is on the back and helps with stability. Over millions of years of evolution, the first spine of the dorsal fin detached from the others and migrated forward, moving slowly down the fish's back until it sat right between the eyes. It lengthened, gained new muscles, and developed the glowing tip. It is a prime example of how evolution works with what it has, twisting and reshaping existing parts to solve new problems. The anglerfish did not invent a new limb, it simply moved an old one and gave it a new job. This adaptation changed the fish from a scavenger into a hunter, allowing it to conquer the energy-poor environment of the deep sea. Because food is so scarce, the anglerfish cannot afford to be wasteful with its movements. When it is not feeding, it enters a state of near-suspended animation. It drifts with the faint currents, expending almost zero energy. Its heart beats slowly. Its gills sip oxygen from the water with minimal effort. This ability to power down is crucial. A meal might not come for months. If the anglerfish burned energy like a surface fish, it would starve within days. Instead, it waits, a dark stone in the water, patient beyond measure. This stillness makes it hard for scientists to study them. When robotic submersibles find an anglerfish, the fish often ignores the robot entirely, hovering motionless, unimpressed by the bright lights and whirring motors, waiting for the only thing that matters, the tiny, rhythmic vibration of food. The bacterial light within the anglerfish's lure is not a birthright, but a hard-won acquisition, a biological partnership that must be forged anew with every generation. When a young anglerfish first begins its development, it is born into the crushing darkness without its characteristic glow, possessing only a tiny, hollow depression at the tip of its developing spine. This microscopic pore is a doorway waiting for a guest, open to the vast and sterile ocean around it. The specific species of bioluminescent bacteria needed to ignite the lure are free-floating in the seawater, drifting like invisible dust motes in the abyss. The young fish must swim through this bacterial soup, waiting for the precise moment when the right microorganism drifts near enough to be captured. Once the correct bacteria enter the pore, the door slams shut, sealing them inside a specialized chamber where they will multiply by the billions. It is a moment of ignition, the flipping of a switch that turns a blind, dark creature into a beacon of the deep, and without this chance encounter, the anglerfish would be doomed to a life of blindness, unable to attract the prey that sustains it. Once the bacteria are safely ensconced within the lure, the relationship becomes one of intricate control and manipulation, where the fish acts as a master electrician, regulating a living bulb. The bacteria require oxygen to produce light, a chemical necessity that the anglerfish exploits with ruthless efficiency. The fish's body pumps oxygen-rich blood into the lure to feed the colony, causing them to blaze with light, but it can also constrict the blood vessels, cutting off the supply in an instant. By starving the bacteria of oxygen for a fraction of a second, the light flickers and dies, only to flare up again when the blood flow returns. This biological dimmer switch allows the anglerfish to pulse its light in complex rhythms, mimicking the staccato flashes of distressed plankton or the mating signals of small crustaceans. It is not just a steady beam, but a language of deception, a Morse code of hunger broadcast into the void to lure victims who believe they are finding a meal rather than becoming one. The shape of the lure itself is as varied as the nightmares of the deep, evolving into forms that are terrifyingly specific to the prey the anglerfish seeks. In some species, the esca, the fleshy bulb at the tip, is not merely a round ball, but a complex sculpture of flesh designed to look exactly like a specific type of food. Evolution has sculpted these lures into the shapes of tiny shrimp, complete with false legs and antennae that wave in the current. Others resemble worms, with segmented bodies that wiggle when the rod is twitched. There are even lures that look like clusters of fish eggs, a rich and helpless prize that would tempt almost any predator. This mimicry is so precise that it fools even the most cautious swimmers, leveraging their basic survival instincts against them. The anglerfish does not just dangle a light, it dangles a lie, a perfect, glowing replica of whatever its prey desires most. Among the many species of this family, the wolf-trap anglerfish stands out as a creature that has abandoned the patience of a fisherman for the violence of a bear trap. Unlike its cousins who wait for prey to nibble at a lure, the wolf trap has evolved a jaw structure that is unique in the animal kingdom. Its upper jaw is vastly larger than its lower one, curving downward to form a massive hooked hood that overshadows the mouth. Inside this hood, sensitive teeth act like triggers. When a fish brushes against the interior of this cavernous mouth, the trap is sprung. The jaws snap shut with a mechanical speed that defies the resistance of the water, impaling the victim on curved spikes that interlock like the bars of a prison cell. This creature does not need to rely solely on visual attraction. It has turned its entire head into a hair-trigger weapon, a reactive biological machine that punishes curiosity with instant death. Far more delicate, but equally deadly, is the bearded anglerfish, a creature that has turned its skin into a sensory net to compensate for the eternal gloom. While most fish rely on eyes or internal ears, the bearded anglerfish is covered in hundreds of long, branching filaments that extend from its chin and body like a thick, floating mane. These filaments are not hair, but sensitive, fleshy tendrils that drift in the water, extending the fish's sense of touch far beyond its own skin. It is as if the fish is surrounded by an invisible web of nerves. When a prey animal moves nearby, the displacement of water brushes against these phantom hairs, alerting the anglerfish to the location, size, and speed of the meal. It sits at the center of this sensory web like a spider, feeling the ocean rather than seeing it, waiting for the shudder of a movement that signals food is within striking range. The reproductive strategy of the anglerfish is not merely strange. It is a solution to a problem of immense scale, involving a journey that spans miles of vertical ocean. When the female releases her eggs, she does not scatter them into the deep to be eaten by scavengers. Instead, she encases them in a massive gelatinous veil, a floating raft of mucus that can be several meters long. This ghostly ribbon, containing millions of tiny eggs, is buoyant and begins a slow, silent ascent toward the surface. It rises from the crushing depths of the midnight zone, passing through the twilight zone until it reaches the sunlit surface waters. Here, in the warmth and light that the adult anglerfish can never visit, the eggs hatch. The larvae are born into a world of brightness and plenty, feeding on the microscopic plankton that thrive in the sun. This journey ensures that the young have enough food to grow, a luxury the deep ocean could never provide to millions of tiny mouths. These larvae look nothing like the monsters they will become. They are tiny, transparent, and round, drifting innocently among the plankton of the upper ocean. For several months, they live the life of surface creatures, soaking up energy and growing reserves of fat. They are unrecognizable as anglerfish, lacking the lure, the giant teeth, and the dark skin. But as they mature, a genetic switch flips, and the call of the deep begins to pull them downward. Their bodies begin to change, reshaping themselves for the crushing pressure below. They stop eating surface food and begin the long, slow fall into the abyss. It is a one-way migration, a descent into the dark from which they will never return. As they sink, their eyes change, their skin darkens, and the lure begins to grow, preparing them for a life in the shadows where their parents wait. The physiological adaptation required to survive the descent is a marvel of chemical engineering, centered around a molecule known as trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. In the shallow world, proteins are delicate structures that fold in specific ways to function. Extreme pressure forces these proteins to unravel and lose their shape. which would kill an ordinary fish instantly. To prevent this, the anglerfish's cells are packed with TMAO, a chemical chaperone that binds to water molecules and stabilizes proteins, holding their shape against the crushing weight of the ocean. The deeper the fish lives, the more TMAO it accumulates in its tissues. This chemical is what gives deep-sea fish their distinct, pungent smell when brought to the surface. But down in the dark, it is the armor that keeps their biology from collapsing. It is a chemical shield, invisible but essential, allowing life to thrive where physics says it should be crushed. Even the bones of the anglerfish tell a story of scarcity and adaptation, refined by a world where every mineral is precious. Building a thick, calcium-rich skeleton like a tuna or a cod requires immense amounts of nutrients that simply do not exist in the deep sea. Calcium is rare in the midnight zone, and maintaining heavy bones is energetically expensive. So, the anglerfish has abandoned the concept of a rigid skeleton. Its bones are thin, light, and cartilaginous, more like the flexible gristle of a nose than the hard femur of a mammal. This reduction saves energy and resources, but it also makes the fish incredibly pliable. It can bend and distort its body without injury, fitting into narrow crevices or expanding to accommodate a massive meal. It is a creature of soft architecture, built not to withstand impact, but to exist in a low-energy equilibrium with the water around it. This softness extends to the very fluid that fills its cells, particularly the lipids that make up its cell membranes. In the freezing temperatures of the deep ocean, normal fat would turn into a solid block of wax, freezing the cell walls and stopping all biological function. The anglerfish, however, incorporates specialized unsaturated fats into its membranes, keeping them liquid and fluid even at temperatures close to freezing. It is the biological equivalent of antifreeze. These specialized fats allow nutrients and signals to pass in and out of cells freely, keeping the fish's metabolism running in an environment that would turn a stick of butter into a brick. Every cell in its body is tuned to the cold, a microscopic mastery of chemistry that keeps the spark of life burning in the refrigerator of the deep. In this frozen world, the anglerfish's metabolism runs at a pace that is almost geological in its slowness. It lives in the slow lane of existence, burning calories at a rate so low it barely registers as being alive compared to surface animals. An anglerfish can sit motionless for so long that it gathers dust, marine snow, on its skin. Its heart beats only a few times per minute, a sluggish rhythmic thud that pushes thick, cold blood through its veins. This extreme energy conservation is the only way to survive in a place where a meal might appear only once or twice a year. It does not chase, it does not explore, it does not play. It simply exists, a suspended animation that is only broken by the violent, instantaneous reflex of the strike. This patience is not a choice but a biological mandate. To move is to waste, and to waste is to die. The digestive process of the anglerfish is equally drawn out, a slow-motion chemical dismantling of its prey. Because it swallows its food whole, often including shells, bones, and scales, the stomach must produce powerful acids to break down the meal. But in the cold temperatures of the deep, chemical reactions happen slowly. A large meal can take weeks or even months to digest. During this time, the anglerfish carries the weight of its prey, often visually distended, with the shape of the swallowed fish pressing against its flank. There is a risk to this gluttony. If the meal is too large, it can begin to rot inside the stomach before it can be digested. The gases from decomposition can inflate the anglerfish like a balloon, floating it helplessly to the surface where it will die. It is a delicate balance between starvation and a lethal feast, a gamble taken with every bite. Among the strange adaptations of these creatures is the Lasiognathus, a genus of anglerfish that has evolved a literal fishing rod and hook. The elysium of this fish is not just a simple stalk. It has a hinge at the base and a long, whip-like filament that extends far beyond the head. At the end of this line hang 3 bony hooks, curved and sharp, surrounded by the glowing lure. It looks uncannily like human fishing tackle. The fish can cast this line out and retract it, playing the lure through the water. It does not just wait for prey to swim into its mouth. It snags them. When a shrimp or small fish investigates the light, the Lasiognathus jerks its head, snagging the prey on the hooks before reeling it in toward its jaws. It is a tool user in the most biological sense, possessing a weapon that nature has forged into a perfect analog of our own invention. For the male anglerfish that fuses to the female, the biological hurdles are even more complex than finding her. He must survive the union without being destroyed by her immune system. In any other animal, grafting a foreign body onto another would trigger an immediate and violent immune response. The host body would identify the attached tissue as an invader and attack it with white blood cells, rejecting the graft. But the anglerfish has discarded parts of its own immune system to allow this fusion to happen. Scientists have discovered that these species lack the genes for certain antibodies and T cells that are critical for recognizing foreign tissue. The female's body has effectively become blind to the presence of the male, allowing him to breach her skin and fuse with her blood vessels without triggering a defense. It is a risky evolutionary strategy, giving up immune defense for the sake of reproduction, but it is the price paid for companionship in the void. This fusion goes beyond simple attachment. It involves a hormonal synchronization that borders on telepathy. Once the male is fused, his reproductive cycle becomes enslaved to hers. He cannot produce sperm at will. He must wait for a chemical signal from her blood. When the female is ready to spawn, she releases hormones into her bloodstream that travel through the fused connection and trigger the male's release. This ensures that the gametes are released at the exact same moment, maximizing the chances of fertilization in the vast, diluted ocean. They are 2 bodies operating as a single organism, a coordinated biological machine where the boundaries of individual selfhood have been completely erased in favor of a shared destiny. Despite their terrifying appearance, anglerfish are fragile creatures, existing in a delicate equilibrium that is easily shattered by the intrusion of the surface world. Their bodies are held together by the pressure of the deep. When brought up in nets by trawlers, they often arrive in a ruined state. The depressurization causes their gases to expand and their gelatinous tissues to lose their form. The monsters we see in museum jars, bloated, distorted, and grotesque, are poor representations of the living animals. In their natural habitat, they are graceful in their own way, perfectly supported by the water, their forms sleek and taut against the pressure. We judge them by their ruin, seeing only the wreckage of a creature that was designed for a world we can barely comprehend. The eyes of the deep-sea anglerfish, though often small, are miracles of optical efficiency, tuned to see the invisible. In the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, the only light comes from other living things. To see these faint glimmers, the anglerfish's eyes have lost the cones used for color vision and rely entirely on rods, the photoreceptors responsible for low-light vision. These rods are packed into the retina at densities far higher than in any human eye, creating a sensor that can detect a single photon of light. This sensitivity allows the anglerfish to spot the faint, ghostly wake of a swimming copepod or the distant flash of a potential mate against the backdrop of absolute black. It is vision stripped of all artistry, reduced to the raw detection of energy in the dark. The teeth of the anglerfish are not fixed in place like ours. They are depressible and hinged, a design that transforms the mouth into a one-way valve. When prey enters, The teeth fold backward, lying flat to allow the smooth passage of the victim into the throat. But the moment the prey tries to reverse course, the teeth snap back into their upright position, locking into place. This ratchet mechanism ensures that there is no escape. The struggle of the prey only serves to deploy the cage more fully. It is a mechanical solution to the problem of slippery, desperate food, ensuring that once a decision is made to strike, the outcome is almost always final. There are rare instances where the anglerfish's camouflage fails, or rather, takes a different path entirely. The ghost anglerfish. Some specimens have been found with almost no pigment at all, their skin a translucent, ghostly white. In the deepest parts of the ocean, where no light penetrates, color becomes irrelevant. Black is usually the best camouflage, but if you are deep enough, being transparent is just as effective. These albino wanderers drift like spirits, their internal organs visible through their skin, their red hearts beating in a clear chest. They are reminders that the rules of biology are flexible, and in the absence of light, the need for color vanishes, leaving behind a creature of glass and water. The silence of the anglerfish's world is not empty. It is a heavy, pressurized quiet that dampens sound and isolates every living thing. Sound travels faster in water than in air, and in the high-pressure environment of the deep, it carries for incredible distances. The anglerfish lives in a soundscape of distant clicks, groans, and whistles from whales and other fish miles away. But it makes no sound itself. It has no voice, no grinding teeth, no drumming swim bladder. It is a mute hunter. Its survival depends on acoustic stealth, on moving through the water without creating a single ripple of noise that could alert its prey or a larger predator. It is a shadow in the soundscape, a void where noise goes to die, existing in a hush that has lasted for eons. The darkness of the bathypelagic zone is not merely an absence of light, but a canvas for deception, where the anglerfish's own body can become a shield of thorns in a world of soft bodies. While many species rely on the gelatinous, yielding flesh to survive the crushing pressure, the football fish, a robust genus of anglerfish, has taken a different evolutionary path, arming itself with a coat of biological armor. Embedded in its thick, leathery skin are bony plates known as bucklers, each one anchored deep within the dermis and rising to a sharp, calcified spine. These plates are scattered across the fish's round body like studs on a medieval shield, turning the slow-moving drifter into a prickly, unappetizing mouthful for any predator large enough to consider it prey. This defense mechanism is rare in the deep sea, where building bone is energetically expensive, suggesting that the football fish faces threats we have yet to fully understand. Perhaps from the swift, silent strikes of deep-sea sharks, or the grasping tentacles of giant squid that prowl the same depths. This armor is often invisible until it is too late, hidden by the intense coloration that characterizes these creatures, a hue that is not always black. While the classic image of an anglerfish is a shadow-colored monster, many species, including certain whip-nose anglers and the Prince Axel's wonderfish, are draped in shades of deep, vibrant crimson. In the sunlit world, red is a color of warning or passion, screaming to be seen. But in the physics of the ocean, red is the perfect camouflage. The wavelengths of red light are weak and low energy. They are the first to be absorbed by water, rarely penetrating deeper than 10 or 15 meters from the surface. Down in the midnight zone, there is no red light to reflect off the fish's skin, meaning the color red appears physically identical to the color black. To the eyes of a predator scanning the gloom with blue-sensitive vision, a bright red anglerfish is simply a hole in the water, a ghost that cannot be detected until it is touched. Beneath this camouflaged skin lies a respiratory system that has been masterfully re-engineered for a life of low energy and low oxygen. The gills of the anglerfish are not the wide, flapping operculums seen on a goldfish or a bass, which require constant, vigorous pumping to move water. Instead, the gill opening has been reduced to a tiny, tube-like pore located behind the pectoral fin, often smaller than the fish's own eye. This restricted opening serves a dual purpose. It allows for a slow, controlled siphon of water that matches the fish's lethargic metabolism, and it protects the delicate gill filaments from damage. By pulsing the floor of its mouth, the anglerfish draws water in and gently pushes it out through these narrow exhaust pipes, creating a rhythmic, low-pressure flow that extracts the maximum amount of oxygen with the minimum amount of muscular effort. It is a breathing technique bordering on meditation, a sip of life taken in slow motion. This slow pace of life extends to the very growth of the animal, recorded in the secret calcifications of its inner ear. Like trees that bear rings marking the passage of years, the anglerfish possesses tiny ear stones called otoliths that accumulate layers of calcium carbonate over time. By slicing these stones and examining them under a microscope, scientists have discovered that these creatures grow at a glacial pace, adding only millimeters of size over long spans of time. A large female, the size of a basketball, may be decades old, a silent witness to 30 or 40 years of darkness. This longevity is a necessity in an environment where resources are so thin. If they grew fast and died young, they would burn out before they ever found a meal or a mate. They are the elders of the abyss, living on a timeline that is stretched and slowed by the cold and the dark. The diversity of the anglerfish family includes members who have abandoned the glowing lure entirely, choosing to hunt in total darkness, using only the sense of touch. The fanfin angler is one such creature, a beast that looks less like a fish and more like a ragged shadow. It possesses no photophores, no light-producing bacteria, and no glowing esca to attract prey. Instead, its body is covered in extremely long, hair-like rays that extend from its fins, creating a sensory halo that can reach nearly a meter in diameter. It drifts with its mouth open, a silent spider in the center of a web of nerves. When a fish bumps into one of these long, drifting filaments, the fanfin reacts instantly, snapping at the disturbance. This evolutionary divergence proves that light is not the only way to rule the dark. Sometimes, becoming a living tripwire is just as deadly. For those that do use light, the lure is not merely a flashlight, but a distinct organ with its own blood supply, nervous system, and biological independence. The connection between the anglerfish and its bacteria is so profound that the bacteria have lost the ability to survive outside the host. Genetic analysis of the bacteria inside the lure reveals that their genomes have shrunk, shedding the genes necessary for producing distinct cell walls or processing certain nutrients found in the open ocean. They have become biologically trapped, domesticated by the fish over millions of years. In return for their light, the fish provides them with a stable environment and a constant supply of sugar and amino acids. It is a relationship that has crossed the line from partnership to total dependency. The bacteria are no longer wild organisms, but essentially a manufactured organ of the fish's own body, kept alive in a glowing prison of flesh. The distinctiveness of this glow is crucial, as each species of anglerfish hosts a specific strain of bioluminescent bacteria that emits a slightly different signature of light. In the vast, lonely expanse of the deep, a male must be able to distinguish the glow of a female of his own species from the glow of a predator or a different type of anglerfish. Some lures emit a steady, ghostly shine, while others sparkle or pulse. The shape of the light, whether it comes from a single bulb, a branched tree of filaments, or a series of glowing spots, acts as a visual password. A male, scanning the darkness, is looking for a specific code, a pattern of light that is hardwired into his tiny brain, ensuring that he does not waste his precious, dwindling energy chasing a light that belongs to a stranger. Historically, the radical differences between the males, females, and larvae of these species caused centuries of confusion for the scientists trying to classify them. For a long time, the tiny, free-swimming males were thought to be an entirely different family of fish, while the bizarre, balloon-like larvae were classified as a third group. It took years of detective work comparing the anatomy of the distinct forms to realize they were all the same animal at different stages of life. The whalefish, the tapetail, and the bignose fish were famously discovered to be the female, larva, and male of the same species, a shape-shifting life cycle that sees the animal morph from a surface dweller to a deep-sea monster. This transformative biology is a testament to the extreme pressures of the environment, which demands completely different body plans for feeding in the sun versus breeding in the dark. The jaw of the anglerfish is not just a trap, but a sensory instrument, lined with nerves that provide instant feedback the moment prey crosses the threshold. The teeth are not merely sharp, they are sensitive. When a shrimp or small fish brushes against a tooth, the signal bypasses the fish's higher brain functions and triggers a reflex arc, snapping the jaw shut faster than conscious thought could allow. This reflex is critical because in the cold, sluggish nervous system of a deep-sea fish, thinking takes time. If the anglerfish had to process the sensation of food and then decide to bite, the prey would be gone. Instead, the mouth acts on its own, a loaded spring that fires the moment the trigger is touched, ensuring that the rare opportunities for a meal are never missed due to hesitation. Among the strange behaviors of these fish is the phenomenon of upside-down hunting, practiced by the Gigantactis, or whip-nose angler. This fish possesses a lure that is exceptionally long, sometimes 4 times the length of its own body, trailing out in front of it like a whip. Submersible footage has captured these fish drifting in a vertical orientation or completely upside down, with the lure dragging along the seafloor or hanging far below them. This inverted posture may allow the fish to scan for prey hiding in the sediment, or to silhouette its lure against the incredibly faint light from the surface, making the bait more visible to predators looking upward. It is a creature that treats the concept of up and down as irrelevant, orienting itself purely based on the geometry of the hunt. The reproductive fusion of the male and female is not always the rule. In some families of anglerfish, the male is a temporary guest rather than a permanent resident. In the genus Melanocetus, the black sea devil, the male is small but fully formed, with large nostrils and eyes, and sharp teeth for gripping. He finds the female and bites onto her to fertilize her eggs, but he does not fuse. His tissues do not melt into hers, and he does not lose his eyes or organs. Once the act of mating is complete, he releases his grip and swims away, perhaps to find another mate or to die in the solitude of the deep. This facultative parasitism suggests that the evolutionary journey toward total fusion is a spectrum, with some species having committed fully to the union while others cling to a shred of independence. For those males that do fuse, the process of losing their identity extends to the very blood that flows through their veins. Once the circulatory systems are joined, the male's heart may continue to beat, assisting in the movement of blood, or it may atrophy and stop, leaving the female's heart to do the work for both of them. The male becomes a literal drain on her resources, a biological burden that she must support. To compensate for this, females with attached males have been observed to have larger livers, the organ responsible for storing energy, than solitary females. She is eating for 2 or 3, or however many males have latched onto her flanks, her body working overtime to sustain the tiny parasitic lives that are her only hope for genetic immortality. The isolation of the anglerfish is difficult for the human mind to comprehend. The volume of water available to each individual fish is astronomical. Calculations of population density in the bathypelagic zone suggest that in some regions, there may be only 1 anglerfish for every million cubic meters of water. This means that 2 individuals might be separated by miles of empty, black ocean. The odds of meeting are so statistically low that the existence of the species seems mathematically impossible. This immense solitude drives the extreme adaptations of the male's nose and the female's light. They are fighting a war against probability, shouting across a void so vast that finding another living soul is a miracle in itself. This scarcity of life leads to a specific dietary hazard, the risk of choking on ambition. Because the anglerfish is programmed to strike at anything that moves and fits, or nearly fits, into its mouth, it often attacks prey that is too large to be swallowed safely. Fossil records and modern specimens have revealed anglerfish that died with a fish stuck halfway down their throat, the prey too big to enter the stomach, but the backward-pointing teeth making it impossible to spit out. Locked in a fatal embrace, both predator and prey suffocate or starve, drifting to the seafloor as a grim testament to the desperation of deep-sea hunger. It is a world where gluttony is a survival skill, but one that carries the ultimate price if misjudged by even a fraction of an inch. The waste produced by the anglerfish in this nutrient-poor environment is not discarded carelessly, but is a vital part of the deep-sea chemical cycle. The nitrogen-rich excretion of the fish is a rare fertilizer in the abyss. As the anglerfish digests its meal, the waste products are released into the water, where they may be utilized by bacteria and other microscopic life forms that float in the water column. In a place where new nutrients rarely arrive from the surface, the anglerfish acts as a mobile recycling plant, turning the bodies of stray crustaceans into chemical raw materials that sustain the microbial base of the food web. Even in its digestion, it plays a role in the slow, circular economy of the deep. The fishing rod itself, the elysium, is capable of regeneration, a necessary power for a creature whose livelihood dangles just inches from the jaws of others. If a predator strikes at the lure and bites off the glowing bulb, or if the prey fights back and damages the rod, the anglerfish can regrow the structure over time. The loss is devastating in the short term, condemning the fish to a period of starvation and blindness. But the genetic blueprint allows for the reconstruction of the rod, the nerve endings, and the flesh. The bacteria, however, must be reacquired from the water to repopulate the new lure, a second roll of the dice in the game of symbiosis that the fish must win to survive. While the deep ocean is generally still, there are currents and underwater rivers that the anglerfish navigates with passive mastery. These fish are often found in higher concentrations near seamounts and underwater ridges, where the topography of the ocean floor forces deep currents to accelerate and swirl. These currents bring a conveyor belt of organic matter and small prey, creating oases of food in the desert of the deep. The anglerfish positions itself in the lee of these currents, using the flow to bring the food to its waiting mouth, minimizing the need to swim while maximizing the chance of an encounter. It is a strategic placement, a knowledge of the invisible rivers of the abyss encoded in its instincts. The mystery of the humpback anglerfish, the Melanocetus, lies in its shape, which defies the streamlined norms of the ocean. Its body is almost a perfect sphere, a shape that maximizes internal volume while minimizing surface area. This spherical build is the most efficient shape for withstanding pressure and storing large amounts of food, but it makes the fish unstable in the water. To compensate, the anglerfish has evolved tiny pectoral fins that constantly paddle in a circular motion, acting like gyroscopes to keep the round body upright. Without this constant, subtle stabilization, the top-heavy fish would simply roll over and drift upside down. It is a constant, low-energy balancing act performed in the dark. The skin of certain anglerfish is not just black, but is covered in microscopic structures that trap light, acting as a biological black hole. Electron microscopy of the skin surface reveals a layer of melanosomes, pigment-containing organelles, that are packed together in a continuous sheet. In most fish, these pigment cells have gaps between them that might reflect light, but in the anglerfish, they are shaped and arranged to ensure that any photon that hits the skin is bounced around internally until it is absorbed. This is an adaptation to the bioluminescent searchlights of predators. Even if a beam of light hits the anglerfish, nothing bounces back to the source. It is stealth technology that predates human invention by millions of years, a cloak of invisibility woven from pigment and geometry. Even the death of an anglerfish serves a purpose in the deep, contributing to the phenomenon known as a whale fall on a smaller scale. When an anglerfish dies, its body, rich in lipids and proteins, sinks slowly to the abyssal plain. Because the cold water preserves the flesh, the carcass can remain intact for weeks, becoming a feast for scavengers like hagfish, amphipods, and sleeper sharks. In the food desert of the ocean floor, the death of a large female anglerfish is a bonanza, a sudden injection of high-quality energy that supports a localized ecosystem of scavengers. Nothing is wasted in the deep. The energy that the anglerfish spent decades collecting is returned to the dark, feeding the next generation of monsters in the cycle of the eternal night. Descend further now, past the drifting giants of the mid-water, until the blackness beneath us solidifies into the grey, silty expanse of the abyssal plain. Here, on the floor of the ocean, lives a cousin of the deep-sea anglerfish, known as the sea toad, or coffin fish, a creature that has abandoned the concept of swimming almost entirely. The sea toad is a vibrant, often pink or orange sphere of flesh that rests upon the sediment like a discarded balloon. Its pectoral fins have undergone a remarkable evolutionary transformation, shifting their function from propulsion to support. The bones within these fins have thickened and lengthened, forming an elbow-like joint that allows the fish to use them as legs. In the utter stillness of the seafloor, the sea toad does not glide, it trudges. It walks across the ooze with a slow, deliberate gait, dragging its heavy body forward one clumsy step at a time. This mode of transport is incredibly energy efficient for a bottom dweller, allowing it to scour the mud for prey, without the caloric cost of maintaining buoyancy or fighting the friction of the water, with a tail that has long since atrophied into uselessness. When the sea toad feels threatened in this exposed landscape, it employs a defense mechanism that transforms its sluggish body into an impenetrable fortress. Its skin is loose and flaccid, allowing for massive expansion, but instead of air, it fills itself with the surrounding seawater. Special valves in its gill chambers close tight, and the fish rapidly gulps down water, pumping its body full until it swells to nearly double its original size. It becomes a rigid, spherical object, difficult for any predator to bite or swallow. To add to this defense, the skin of the sea toad is covered in tiny, spiny scales called denticles, which feel like sandpaper to the touch. A predator that attempts to attack this sudden hardened balloon finds itself trying to bite into a prickly, unyielding rock that is simply too large to fit in its mouth, forcing it to abandon the hunt, while the sea toad waits, motionless and inflated, for the danger to pass. The lure of the sea toad differs significantly from its mid-water cousins, reflecting its life on the bottom, where the need for long distance, signaling, is reduced. Its elysium is short, often tucked away into a special groove on the top of its head when not in use, preserving it from the abrasion of the sand and mud. Unlike the swaying, high-mounted lanterns of the deep swimmers, the sea toad's lure is a modest glowing mop that sits just above its eyes. The bacteria inside are dimmer, producing a subtle glow that illuminates only the immediate area in front of the fish's mouth. This is close-quarters fishing, designed to attract worms and small bottom-dwelling crustaceans that scuttle across the sediment. The sea toad does not cast a wide net of light. It creates a small, intimate pool of curiosity, drawing prey out of the mud and directly into the suction zone of its waiting jaws. Moving from the deep abyss to the shallower continental shelves, we find the monkfish, or goosefish, a member of the anglerfish family that has conquered the sunlit sands of the coastal ocean. The monkfish is a master of disguise, but unlike the deep-sea anglerfish, which uses darkness to hide, the monkfish uses the earth itself. Its body is flattened, spreading out like a rug of mottled brown and grey flesh that perfectly mimics the texture and colour of the rocky or sandy sea bottom. Around the edges of its body are fringes of skin that break up its outline, looking exactly like ragged bits of seaweed or debris. When a monkfish settles into the sediment, it wiggles its pectoral fins to shovel sand over its back. Burying itself until only its eyes and mouth are visible, it becomes a piece of the landscape, a hidden geological feature that breathes, waiting for a flounder or a skate to swim unknowingly over its hidden trap. The lure of the monkfish is not bioluminescent, for in the shallow waters where it hunts, sunlight is still present, and a faint glow would be invisible against the brightness of the day. Instead, the monkfish relies on a lure that mimics physical movement. The esca at the tip of its rod is a fleshy, ragged flap of skin that resembles a small, injured fish or a piece of drifting kelp. The monkfish waves this lure frantically when it spots prey, twitching the rod to make the bait dance in the current. To a passing predator, this looks like an easy meal, a distressed creature struggling against the tide. The monkfish plays upon the greed of other hunters, turning their predatory instinct into a fatal error. It is a daylight deception, proving that the anglerfish's strategy is versatile enough to work in both the eternal night of the trench and the bright, chaotic waters of the coast. Deep within the anatomy of the bioluminescent lure found on deep-sea species, there lies a sophisticated biological mirror that amplifies the bacteria's faint light. The glowing bacteria themselves are microscopic and, on their own, would not produce enough light to be seen from a great distance. To solve this, the inner surface of the esca is lined with a reflective layer made of guanine crystals. Guanine is the same substance that makes fish scales shiny and silver. In the lure, these crystals are arranged in precise, tiled stacks that act like the reflector in a flashlight or a car headlight. They bounce the light produced by the bacteria outward, focusing it into a beam and preventing it from being absorbed by the fish's own tissues. This internal mirror ensures that every photon of energy created by the colony is directed toward the ocean, maximizing the efficiency of the lure and creating a brightness that defies the small number of bacteria inside. Covering the opening of the lure is a transparent lens, a piece of specialized tissue that further manipulates the light before it enters the water. In some species, this lens is clouded or textured, acting as a diffuser that softens the glow and spreads it out into a wide, ambient aura. In others, the lens is clear and convex, focusing the light into a sharper point. The anglerfish can alter the shape of this lens slightly by contracting muscles around the pore of the esca, changing the quality of the light from a soft, inviting pulse to a sharp, piercing beacon. This optical fine-tuning allows the fish to adapt its signal to the clarity of the water and the sensitivity of the prey it is hunting, operating a biological lantern with the precision of an optical engineer. The bacteria that inhabit the anglerfish's lure are not a random collection of ocean microbes, but a specific monoculture, meaning that only one single species of bacteria is allowed to live inside the light organ. This species is typically Photobacterium or Vibrio, but the strain found inside the anglerfish is often genetically distinct from the free-living versions found in the water. The interior of the esca is a fortress of exclusivity. The anglerfish produces antimicrobial chemicals that kill any foreign bacteria attempting to enter, ensuring that only its specific partner survives. This purity is essential because different bacteria produce light of different intensities or colors, and some might even be pathogenic. By maintaining a pure culture, the anglerfish ensures that its light remains consistent and that its internal garden does not become an infection that rots the lure from the inside out. The nose of the male anglerfish, particularly in species like the serratias, is a structure of immense complexity designed for analyzing the chemistry of the void. While humans have a small patch of olfactory tissue inside our noses, the male anglerfish's olfactory organs are arranged in a series of large, stacked plates called lamellae. These plates fan out like the pages of a book, vastly increasing the surface area available to catch scent molecules. As water flows over these plates, sensory cells detect the specific pheromones released by the female. In the stillness of the deep ocean, where there is very little turbulence to mix the water, a scent trail can remain intact for a long time, forming a narrow, invisible ribbon of odor that stretches for miles. The male's nose is tuned to follow this ribbon with the dedication of a bloodhound, swimming in a zigzag pattern to stay within the boundaries of the chemical plume. Among the most bizarre adaptations in this family belongs to the wonderfish, Thaumatictis, a bottom-dwelling anglerfish that has moved its lure from the top of its head to the inside of its mouth. This creature has a broad, flat head with jaws that are lined with incredibly long, curved teeth that hang down from the roof of the mouth like the bars of a cage. The bioluminescent lure is suspended from the palate, dangling directly in the center of the open cavern of the jaws. Instead of attracting prey to its face, the wonderfish invites them to swim directly into the danger zone. It rests on the seafloor with its mouth wide open, the lure twinkling in the darkness of its throat. Small fish and crustaceans, drawn to the shelter and the light, swim inside the mouth to investigate. The moment they cross the threshold, the jaws snap shut, trapping them instantly within the pre-built prison of teeth. The teeth of the Thaumatictis are hinged in a way that makes escape physically impossible once the trap has sprung. Unlike other anglerfish whose teeth simply angle backward, the wonderfish's marginal teeth can rotate and lock, creating a mesh that resembles a biological sieve. When the prey realizes it is trapped and thrashes against the bars, the teeth dig in further. This internal trap strategy allows the wonderfish to target shy, small prey that might be too skittish to approach a large external lure. It turns the mouth itself into a glowing cave, a false sanctuary in the hostile deep that promises safety but delivers only digestion. The red-lipped batfish is another close relative of the anglerfish that has taken the walking adaptation to a glamorous extreme. Found in the waters around the Galapagos Islands, this fish has pectoral fins that function almost exactly like rigid, articulated legs, complete with a knee-like joint and a flat, foot-like tip. It struts across the sea floor with a distinctive, jerky rhythm, looking more like a frog or a lizard than a fish. Its most striking feature, however, is its bright red lips, which look as though they have been applied with lipstick. Scientists believe this coloration is not for camouflage, but for species recognition during mating rituals on the illuminated seafloor. The batfish has a small vestigial lure on its nose, a tiny remnant of its anglerfish heritage that it no longer uses for hunting, proving that evolution can dismantle a tool just as easily as it can build one. The hairy angler, Colophryne polynema, presents a sensory overload in the deep, possessing both a lightless lure and a body covered in thousands of long, sensitive filaments. This fish has abandoned the strategy of bioluminescence entirely, suggesting that in its specific niche, being invisible is more advantageous than being attractive. Its lure is a simple flap of skin, but its filaments are so long they create a tangled cloud around the fish. This cloud acts as a remote sensing aura. The hairy angler does not need to see its prey. It feels the shape and trajectory of the water moving around it. It exists in a self-made web of touch, floating in the dark like a suspended nervous system. This adaptation requires a brain capable of processing thousands of simultaneous touch signals, building a 3D image of the surroundings based purely on vibration and pressure. Pressure at these depths affects the very shape of the molecules that make up the anglerfish's body, specifically the enzymes that drive its metabolism. On land, enzymes are folded into precise shapes, like origami, to perform chemical reactions. Under the pressure of the deep sea, which can exceed several tons per square inch, normal enzymes would be crushed and distorted, rendering them useless. The anglerfish has evolved piezolites, small organic molecules that bind to water within the cells and protect the enzymes from the crushing force. These piezolites act as structural supports, propping up the proteins so they can maintain their shape and function. Without these microscopic buttresses, the chemistry of life would grind to a halt, and the anglerfish would perish from metabolic failure even if it had plenty of food. The nervous system of the deep-sea anglerfish operates at a slower speed than that of surface fish due to the extreme cold. Electrical signals travel along nerves more slowly at low temperatures, which means the reaction time of the anglerfish is inherently delayed compared to a warm water predator. To compensate for this, the nerves involved in the feeding reflex are exceptionally thick. In neurology, a thicker nerve fiber conducts signals faster, overcoming the resistance of the cold. The neurons that connect the jaw muscles to the trigger mechanism are some of the largest in the fish's body, ensuring that despite the near-freezing environment, the bite remains instantaneous. It is a biological workaround, a high-speed cable installed in a frozen machine. The digestive system of the hairy angler and other deep-sea species is capable of shutting down completely during periods of starvation to save energy. The stomach lining produces less acid, the gut movement stops, and the blood flow to the digestive tract is reduced to a trickle. The organ effectively goes into hibernation within the living fish. When a meal is finally captured, the system must wake up rapidly, flushing the stomach with blood and enzymes to begin the breakdown process before the prey rots. This metabolic switching is risky. If the system wakes up too slowly, the food might spoil inside the fish, but if it stays active all the time, the fish would burn too many calories. The anglerfish walks a tightrope of energy management, keeping its internal fires banked until the very moment fuel is added. Currents in the deep ocean are often slow, but the anglerfish utilizes the marine snow, the constant drift of organic particles from the surface, as a tracking mechanism. By sensing the density of particles hitting its skin, the anglerfish can orient itself relative to the flow of nutrients. If the marine snow is falling vertically, the water is still. If it strikes at an angle, there is a current. The anglerfish aligns itself against the current, knowing that the flow will carry scents and vibrations from upstream. It uses the falling debris of the ocean not just as a background condition, but as a navigational aid, a directional rein that tells it which way to face to find the river of food. The fragility of these creatures is highlighted by the impact of deep-sea trawling, a fishing method that drags heavy nets across the ocean floor. Because anglerfish grow so slowly and reproduce so infrequently, their populations are incredibly sensitive to disturbance. A single pass of a trawl net can wipe out a population that has taken centuries to establish. The sea toads and wonderfish, which cannot swim away from the nets, are scooped up and crushed instantly. Unlike surface fish that can repopulate quickly, a cleared patch of the abyssal plain may remain empty of anglerfish for generations. Their slow life cycle, perfectly adapted for the stable, unchanging deep, becomes their greatest vulnerability in the face of sudden industrial change. The elbows of the pectoral fins in benthic anglerfish like the handfish and sea toads are not just simple joints. They are complex structures containing a reduced number of radials, the bones that support the fin rays. In most fish, these radials are small and numerous, but in the walking anglers, they have fused and elongated to form a long arm-like limb. At the end of this limb, the fin rays spread out like fingers. This allows the fish to manipulate the substrate, gripping onto sponges or rocks to hold itself in place against a current without using its muscles to swim. It is a passive anchoring system, a way to hold its ground in the vast, featureless plain of the seabed using hands made of fin. Finally, we must consider the silence of the sediment itself, the home of the benthic anglerfish. The floor of the deep ocean is covered in a thick layer of biogenic ooze, a soft, fine mud made of the skeletons of microscopic plankton that have fallen for millions of years. This mud is sound absorbent, creating an environment that is even quieter than the open water. When a sea toad or monkfish moves across this surface, the mud muffles its footsteps. The softness of the floor aids in their stealth. There is no crunch of gravel or snap of twigs. The bottom of the ocean is a soundproof room, and the anglerfish is the silent occupant, perfectly adapted to a world where the ground itself swallows noise, ensuring that the only sound a prey animal hears is the rushing water of the final strike. Among the Ytbangnihit, varied family of these deep-sea phantoms, there exists a rebel that has discarded the very tool that gives the family its name, the needle-beard sea devil, or Neoceratius spinosus. This creature has evolved to abandon the bioluminescent lure entirely, drifting through the midnight zone without a lantern to guide its way or attract a meal. In a world defined by the ability to create light, the needlebeard has chosen total darkness, relying instead on a set of teeth that are unique among all fish. Its teeth are not located inside the mouth, but are anchored on the outside of its lips, long, needle-like spines that project outward like a radial crown of thorns. Without a lure to bring prey close, it is believed that this fish acts as a suspended net, drifting silently until a soft-bodied creature, perhaps a jelly or a squid, brushes against the external teeth. The moment contact is made, the needlebeard snags the prey with its external hooks, a hunter that has traded deception for a passive, prickly embrace. The internal mechanics that allow other anglerfish to wield their lures are a marvel of anatomical engineering, centered around a specialized bone known as the pterygophore. This bone, which in other fish would support a dorsal fin, has elongated and detached from the rest of the skeleton to become a mobile boom for the fishing rod. It lies in a groove along the top of the skull, controlled by a set of dedicated muscles that allow the fish to extend the rod forward or retract it backward. In some species, this bone is so long that when retracted, it slides under the skin of the back, sheathing the glowing bulb like a sword in a scabbard. This retraction capability serves as a dimmer switch, allowing the fish to hide its light instantly if a predator approaches, or to pull the lure closer to its mouth to coax a mesmerizing prey into the final fatal zone. In the shallow, cold waters of Tasmania, far from the abyssal trenches, lives the spotted handfish, a critically endangered relative of the deep-sea angler that has taken the walking lifestyle to a level of extreme specialization. Unlike its deep-sea cousins, who release thousands of eggs to drift in the current, the handfish lays a small cluster of eggs on the seafloor and, in a rare display of parental care, stands guard over them. The mother uses her hand-like pectoral fins to brace herself against the current, curling her tail around the base of the sea squirt or sponge where her eggs are attached. She remains there for weeks, a sentinel in the sand, cleaning the eggs and protecting them from small predators. This lack of a floating larval stage means that handfish cannot disperse across the ocean. They are born on the same patch of sand where they will live and die, making them incredibly vulnerable to changes in their immediate environment, but deeply connected to their tiny home territory. The voracious appetite of the monkfish, the shallow water ambush predator, is not limited to creatures of the sea. It has been known to breach the surface boundary to hunt birds. There are documented accounts of monkfish rising from the bottom in shallow coastal waters to snatch diving seabirds, such as dovekies or loons, that have plunged into the water in search of fish. The monkfish waits below, camouflaged against the sand, and when the bird dives, the fish strikes upward, engulfing the bird whole. This behavior has earned it the nickname duck eater in some old maritime communities. It is a collision of worlds, a predator from the benthic mud consuming a creature of the air, proving that the hunger of the anglerfish respects no biological border. The genetic sacrifice required for the male anglerfish to fuse with the female involves the deletion of a crucial part of the immune system, known as the RAG genes. In almost all vertebrates, these genes are responsible for shuffling DNA to create a diverse army of antibodies and T-cell receptors, the molecular weapons that identify and destroy invaders. By discarding these genes, the anglerfish has effectively disarmed its own adaptive immune system, leaving it unable to learn new pathogens or reject foreign tissues. This creates a biological paradox. How does the fish survive infections in a bacteria-filled ocean? It is believed that their innate immune system, the primitive first-line defense, has gone into overdrive to compensate. But the full mystery of how they stay healthy while remaining immunologically blind to their mate is a puzzle that geneticists are still trying to piece together. The double lure of the genus Diceratius offers a twist on the classic single-rod design, possessing a second, smaller lure located directly behind the first. This secondary light organ is not just a backup. It is fully functional and can be moved independently of the primary lure. This dual light system may allow the fish to create more complex visual patterns in the dark, perhaps mimicking a pair of swimming eyes or a small school of glowing plankton. By coordinating the movement of two lights, the fish can create a sense of depth and motion that a single bulb cannot, a three-dimensional illusion designed to confuse the depth perception of prey in an environment where judging distance is already nearly impossible. The water content of the deep-sea anglerfish's body is so high that it is barely denser than the ocean itself, resulting in a creature that is more liquid than solid. If you were to touch a living anglerfish in its natural habitat, it would not feel like the firm muscle of a trout. It would feel flabby and yielding, like a water-filled balloon wrapped in thin velvet. This high water content is an adaptation to energy conservation. Building muscle requires protein and calories, but filling cells with water is metabolically free. By being mostly water, the anglerfish matches the density of its surroundings perfectly, achieving neutral buoyancy without the need for a gas bladder. It is a ghost made of the very medium it swims in, a localized thickening of the ocean rather than a distinct, solid entity. The fossil record of the anglerfish is incredibly sparse, a library with most of its pages missing because their soft, cartilaginous bodies simply do not turn to stone easily. Unlike fish with hard, bony skeletons that leave clear impressions in sediment, the anglerfish rots away completely before it can be fossilized. Only a handful of fossils exist, such as A. centrifrine, found in the celebrated Monte Bolca Formation in Italy. These rare stone snapshots from the Eocene epoch, roughly 50 million years ago, show that the anglerfish has changed very little over deep time. They were already rotund, bottom-dwelling trap-setters when mammals were just beginning to conquer the land. They are living fossils who found a winning strategy early in Earth's history and saw no reason to change it. The deepest recorded anglerfish was not found in the midnight zone, but in the abyss, pushing the boundaries of where we thought complex vertebrates could survive. While most anglerfish live between 1,000 and 4,000 meters, solitary sightings and trawling records suggest some species may venture deeper, approaching the 5,000-meter mark. At this depth, the pressure is equivalent to an elephant standing on your thumb. The isolation here is absolute. The food supply is a mere trickle of dust from miles above. Yet, the anglerfish endures, a lonely sentinel patrolling the very basement of the world, proving that life will find a foothold even in the most crushing and desolate corners of the planet. For the larvae of the anglerfish, the journey from the surface to the deep is accompanied by a dramatic restructuring of the eye known as ocular metamorphosis. When the larvae are living in the sunlit surface waters, they possess large, fully functional eyes with cones for seeing color, allowing them to spot microscopic prey in the blue water. But as they begin their descent into the dark, the eye does not just grow. In the males, it becomes huge and bowl-shaped to catch the female's light, while in the females, it often stops growing or regresses, becoming relatively small. The female does not need to see well, she only needs to be seen. This divergence in eye development is a physical manifestation of their different destinies, the male as a seeker and the female as a beacon. The chemical trail that the female anglerfish leaves in the water is not just a simple scent. It is a complex, species-specific pheromone bouquet that acts as a fingerprint in the water. In the vastness of the bathypelagic zone, a generic female scent would be useless, attracting males of the wrong species and wasting precious energy. Each species produces a unique molecular signature, a chemical key that fits only the lock of the male's olfactory receptors. This scent is stable enough to linger in the cold water for hours, creating long, invisible highways of odor that guide the males through the three-dimensional maze of the dark. It is a smell that means survival, the only thread connecting the wandering halves of the species. The sleep of the anglerfish is not sleep as we know it, but a state of metabolic torpor that allows them to power down their biology to near-death levels. In between meals, the fish can lower its heart rate and cellular activity, entering a trance-like state where time seems to stop. It does not dream, it merely exists. Its brain activity drops to the bare minimum required to process the vibration of the lateral line. This ability to turn off the self is what allows them to endure the emptiness. They are the monks of the deep, meditating on nothingness for weeks at a time, their life force banked like a smoldering coal, waiting for the breath of oxygen that comes with food. There is a species of anglerfish, Philorhynchthys, or the leaf-nose angler, that possesses flap-like structures on its snout that resemble dried leaves. These flaps are not part of the lure, but act as sensory baffles, perhaps directing water flow into the nostrils or breaking up the silhouette of the fish's face. In the interplay of shadow and faint bioluminescence, looking like a drifting piece of detritus is a powerful disguise. The leaf-nose angler combines the glowing lure with this physical camouflage, presenting itself as a piece of trash that happens to have a light attached, a confusing visual signal that might pause a predator just long enough for the anglerfish to escape, or pause a prey item just long enough to be eaten. The role of marine snow in the anglerfish's life is indirect, but vital. It is the manna that feeds the creatures that the anglerfish eats. The copepods, shrimp, and small bristlemouth fish that make up the anglerfish's diet all rely on the falling detritus from the surface. Therefore, the anglerfish is intimately connected to the sun it will never see. If a plankton bloom happens on the surface, months later, the deep ocean will see a boom in shrimp, and eventually, the anglerfish will feast. They are the apex predators of a shadow ecosystem, dependent on the ghost of solar energy falling as dust from a world miles above their heads. The symbiotic bacteria that light the lure are not capable of bioluminescence when they are free-floating in the ocean. They are dark. It is only when they are packed into the high-density environment of the anglerfish's light organ that they begin to glow. This phenomenon is controlled by a process called quorum sensing. The bacteria release a chemical signal, and when the concentration of this signal gets high enough, meaning there are enough bacteria crowded together, they collectively switch on their light-producing genes. The anglerfish provides the crowding necessary for this chemical conversation to happen. Alone, the bacteria are silent and dark. Together, inside the fish, they find their voice in the form of light. The sheer elasticity of the anglerfish's stomach allows it to consume prey that acts as a last meal for months. But this comes with a hydrodynamic cost. A female who has just swallowed a fish twice her size is incredibly heavy and off balance. She can no longer control her trim in the water easily. She becomes a passenger to her own gluttony, drifting wherever the current takes her until the meal is digested. During this time, she is vulnerable, a bloated, slow-moving target. But in the deep, being heavy and full is a better risk than being light and starving. She trades mobility for security, becoming a living larder anchored by the weight of her success. The discovery of the Prince Axel's wonderfish in the 1950s was a moment that highlighted the extreme depths these creatures inhabit. Named after a Danish prince who was part of the expedition, this fish was pulled from a depth of over 3,500 meters during the famous Galathea expedition. It was one of the first proofs that large, complex predators ruled the abyssal plains. Before this, many assumed the deepest ocean was populated only by worms and simple invertebrates. The wonderfish, with its massive, trap-like mouth and glowing lure, proved that the nightmare landscape of the abyss had its own dragons, thriving in the cold dark where humans could not tread. The bioluminescence of the anglerfish is cold light, meaning it produces almost no heat. In the thermodynamics of the universe, creating light usually creates waste heat. Think of a light bulb or a fire. But the chemical reaction inside the lure, involving the molecule luciferin and the enzyme luciferase, is nearly 100% efficient. All the energy is released as light, with none lost as heat. This is crucial for the anglerfish because it lives in a world that is just above freezing. If its lure produced heat, it might damage the delicate tissues of the esca or warm the surrounding water, creating a thermal signature that could be detected by predators. The anglerfish carries a light that does not burn, a ghostly fire that is perfectly compatible with the ice-cold void. As we reach the end of our understanding of these creatures, we must recognize their resilience. The anglerfish has survived mass extinctions, changing oceans, and the shifting of continents. They have retreated into the one place on Earth that remains constant, the deep. While dinosaurs rose and fell, and mammals conquered the land, the anglerfish was there in the dark, refining its trap, perfecting its patience, and evolving its strange, fused families. They are the masters of efficiency, the ultimate survivors who have learned that the best way to endure a harsh universe is to slow down, blend in, and let the meal come to you. And so, we leave the anglerfish in its eternal midnight, a solitary speck of life drifting in the crushing dark. It is a monster to our eyes, but a marvel of adaptation to its own world. It teaches us that life does not need the sun to shine. It can make its own light. It does not need speed to hunt. It can wait. It does not need to be hard to be strong. It can be soft, yielding, and enduring. The deep ocean is quiet now. The currents are slow, and the lights are dimming. The anglerfish hangs motionless, a guardian of the abyss, safe in the shadows where we cannot reach. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the silent world of the anglerfish, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, or share a thought in the comments below. It helps this little submarine of curiosity find its way to other sleepy travelers. But for now, let the water hold you. Let the pressure fade away. You are safe. You are drifting. Good night.